This is Andy Purewal for ID Boxing. We're here in Jeddah and I'm joined by Matthew Macklin. Matthew, firstly, how are you?
I'm not too bad. I've been a lot worse and I've been better.
Obviously, it's good to catch up with you out here, as we said, in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, we've had a good conversation off camera, but now we're here to do some boxing talk. The return of Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. So, return, obviously, his rematch. What are your thoughts heading into Saturday night, Matthew?
I think it's a brilliant fight. I think the first one was a good fight. Obviously, Usyk won it, but it was a good fight. There was certainly in the middle part. I think Anthony Joshua won. There was probably 3 rounds. I think he won probably 4 out of 5 rounds or 3 out of 4, something in the middle part. And it looked like maybe it was going to shift, but I think it took a lot out of him energy-wise to stay with Usyk in that type of a fight where it's a lot of fencing, a lot of feinting, a lot of trap setting going on. You're trying to lure him into each of them. Like, it's mentally demanding, very, mentally exhausting. And Usyk just could step it up, and AJ couldn't really go with him those last 3-4 rounds, and he was a clear winner in the end. But I think this fight is very interesting. I think the first fight proved that Joshua can't outbox. I don't think he can win this fight if he tries to outbox AJ, or if he tries to outbox Usyk, or if he stands at long range. He's got to ruffle his feathers. He's got to impose himself physically on Usyk. He's got to be the boss. He's got to dictate, and probably be prepared to go through some fire in this fight. It's gonna, if you have a shower, you're gonna get wet. He's gonna get hit in this fight. He might get buzzed. He could get winded, but as long as he's mentally prepared for that type of fight, I think he'll go take it and go through it and can get and get the win. Get the knockout. I don't think he wins on points. And by the way, going in the top, I think the pace he has to set and sustain, I don't think it's sustainable over 12 rounds. But if you're in AJ's team, you'd be thinking, well, hopefully he has him out of there by then. I think it is going to be a bit like that. I think he's got to. It's all or nothing. I don't think he can. I don't think it. I think he has to have. I think the plan has to. He has to really buy into it. Whatever plan they agree on with Robert Garcia, he's got to really buy into it. He has to believe in it and fully commit to it, to executing it. Not thinking, well, I'll go plan A. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to plan B. I don't think there can be a plan B. I think there's one plan, and that's you've got to get this guy out of there. Because if you don't, you'll either you go for it, and if you don't get him out of there, you're going to gas, and then he'll probably get you out of there. But at least you've got a chance of winning. If you stand back and try and box and play chess with this guy, you'll get beaten again, and probably more decisively this time, because in the end, I think Usyk realised he was hurting him and got to him a bit where. But I think if AJ throws his eggs in one basket, but he's really aggressive, takes the centre of the ring, dictates the terms, beats the boss in there, physically imposes himself, then I think he can get the win, and I think but it'll be by stoppage.
Matthew, is an interesting point that you raised about if you're going to go swimming, you're going to get wet, and for AJ, he needs to be willing and understanding that he's going to get hit in this fight. Do you feel like it's been something which he's maybe been a bit cautious of over his recent fights? It's something which I've had a lot of people kind of raise to me, and I've seen people mention it over social media.
Yeah, no, he has. I think since the Ruiz defeat, he's been a bit gun shy, which is that happens when people get stopped, knocked out, hurt. It can happen, but I don't think it was just. When I say a bit gun shy, it was probably tactically it was probably the right way to box Ruiz anyway. In the rematch, he's a guy who's short, good hooker, fast hands, can bang. You don't really want to get into an exchange at mid-distance with a guy like that. So actually, boxing, keeping it long behind the jab and the straight right hands, and tying him up when you did get close were the right tactics for that fight. Coming in light to make sure he was mobile enough to do that, again, was the right thing to do for that fight. For Pulev, he was really good. At range, he was really good. I thought he boxed well against Pulev. But against Usyk in their last fight, there was, I don't know, was he gun shy, or did he think were there the tactics? And did he think he could outbox Usyk? And if so, they got it wrong. He couldn't. And I think, boxing him at distance. We thought maybe early on it'll be a chess match, but he's going to have to put it on him. And it looked like he was going to do that in the middle of rounds. But maybe the early doors chess match was quite tiring for AJ because, you know, when you're playing chess in there with someone that's a master technician and they're constantly feinting and they're just little steps with the feet, little angles, you know, triggering you, little feints triggering you, you burn a lot of nervous energy. Now, someone like Usyk, that's his game. So he's used to it, so he's more comfortable doing it, so he doesn't burn as much energy as, say, AJ, that's not his game. So it takes more out of him than it did Usyk. So like when we got into that final third of the fight, AJ was exhausted, but Usyk was still okay. So, you know, and that's when you talk about dictating the terms or controlling the pace or controlling the pace and controlling the distance of which a fight is for are key elements to winning the fight. And I thought AJ fought Usyk's fight, fought his range, fought the pace, and you know, in the end he was exhausted and got hurt. That said, you know, if AJ was to dictate, come out fast, take the centre ring, dictate, push him back, bully him up close when they clinch, like that, now suddenly this is a fight that suits AJ's physical attributes, and it's a fight he'd be more comfortable in. Is he going to get hit? Could he get caught on the way? Of course he could. But if he's mentally prepared to get caught, if he's over the last month and this week every day sitting down and he's visualising the fight, he's spending 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, you know, listening to some music or whatever, and he's going through playing the fight out in his head, and he's playing out a fight where he's coming out fast, he's taking the centre of the ring, he's getting caught with the shot, getting buzzed a little bit, shaking it off, coming back, getting winded with a body shot, but sucking it up, coming back again. You know, he's going to be prepared for that type of fight then, and that's the fight he needs to make it to win. He's been hurt before and come back and won. Dillian White hurt him, he came back and won. Klitschko hurt him and dropped him, he came back and won. So he can recover and come back and win. You know, he can do that. So for me, that's what he needs to do.
You've obviously just had a little segment in the studio there with Alexander Usyk. I spoke to Johnny Barrows. Get your thoughts on how he looked for photo shoot. You'd have been able to see him without his top on. Was he looking a bit heavier as what we've seen in photos over social media?
So I actually didn't see him. I wasn't in there then, but I was with it. I was in the hallway when he walked past. He didn't have his top. He had his top on, so it's difficult to say. But he did look big. I thought I would be surprised if when he hits the scales he isn't noticeably heavier than he was in their first fight.
The first fight, he was about 221. So if that was just kind of off your own kind of experience and seeing him there, how much heavier would you expect him to be?
So you said 221. I can't remember what that is now in pounds and stone. But
121 pounds.
Yeah. So I know he was, I think, 5 or 6 pounds heavier for AJ than he was for Chisora. And I remember thinking it on the day. I wonder, is that a mistake? Because everyone has an optimum fighting weight, and you know, heavier doesn't mean better, and lighter doesn't mean better. It's, you know, everyone's got their weight where they perform best at. But he did box really well. He was comfortable with those extra 5 pounds. Now, that doesn't mean another 5 or 10 is going to make him. He's going to be comfortable again. I don't know. It's I can't really say with any confidence, give an opinion on that. It's you know, it could make him sluggish, it could make him stronger, it could make you'd imagine it'll make him hit harder, but not necessarily, because if the snap's gone out of the shots and he's a bit more sluggish, then you know, there won't be as much pop in them. But just because there might be more heavy, cumbersome heavy, but they might not have the same ping, the same sharpness to them.
Do you expect to see a different approach from Alexander Usyk heading into this fight? Again, that's Johnny. In that final round, we saw him hurt AJ when he fell back onto the ropes. Do you think he'll use that as kind of ammunition, and he knows how he can hurt Anthony Joshua, and knows maybe if he starts a bit faster, it could be a different outcome in favour of himself?
Yeah, he could definitely be thinking that, but and yeah, he could. Without a doubt, he might think, you know what, I had him rocking in that last round. I need to start quicker, and I can get him out of there. But then you could also, another chain of thought with that, because you did hurt him, but he was knackered as well. You know, so AJ, when he's fresh, is going to take a much better shot than when he's shattered. You know, listen, Usyk knocked Tony Bellew out, but he was exhausted, and he got hit with a shot he didn't see because he was exhausted. You know, that's what. You know, if Usyk had caught him with that shot 3 or 4 rounds earlier, might have bounced off his chin. You know what I mean? He might have took it easily. So, there's that's what I think with AJ. Like, I think AJ shouldn't be gun shy or overly worried about the power of Usyk early on, because he's not a heavy one-punch hitter. But when you're tired and you get hit with a shot you don't see, anyone can be hurt. But I think AJ doesn't want it to get to the point in a fight where he's exhausted. He wants to jump on him early doors when they're both fresh. But AJ will be fresh too, and you're going to get caught. You're going to get with shots, but you're going to absorb the shots better early on when you're still fresh.
Matt, in your career, you fought a slick southpaw in Sergio Martinez up at world level. Talk about the preparations for that fight and what Anthony Joshua should be doing in his own preparations for Alexander Usyk, and how much more difficult it is to prepare for that caliber and that style.
Yeah, it was different because you're fighting someone. It's difficult to get a rhythm with those counterpunch slick southpaws. Pound for pound, Martinez was probably a big. Well, he had a couple of big knockouts, didn't he? Paul Williams, and he had really good hand speed and that. I think Usyk's a better technician. I don't think he carries probably quite the same hand speed or power as what Martinez has. But there is similarities there, and I think that like I say, I tired later on in the fight because it is mentally, even though it was a slower paced fight. Let's say the Felix Sturm fight, which is the one before it. I think I threw over 1,000 punches. It was a hellacious pace that I fought at and kept going. My fitness was through the roof. But even though the Martinez fight was a much slower pace, there was a lot more of this going on. I had a rhythm in the Sturm fight. I was like bang, 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 and it was like I was in a flow. Do you know what I mean? Even though it was a hot pace, I was flowing. It was rhythm. How I trained for the fight, it worked. It went with it. The Martinez fight, it was very difficult to get any rhythm, because it was a chess match. So I was constantly head moving. I was constantly feinting. He was constantly feinting me. I was very aware. Am I a bit close to my feet? Do I need to get a little bit closer? Am I in range? Am I not in range? Can he catch me? This is all going on, and that's the mental energy. It can drain the battery quicker than anything, more so than the physical, because when you're in a rhythm as well, it's more effortless. And Usyk's a fighter that it's very difficult to get rhythm with him because he's constantly touching you, he's constantly fighting. You can't get, the southpaw thing. It takes your jab away a little bit. You normally if you're orthodox jab, right hand, but left hooks. You're in a nice rhythm and everything flows. But with the southpaw, and especially one like Usyk, it's difficult to find any rhythm. It's difficult to put combinations together. So even though it might seem like a slower pace, it's more tiring. And unless AJ gets on top of him and just cautions the wind a little bit, not gung-ho and reckless, but full of intent, dictating, forcing the pace. If you get caught with 1 or 2 on the way, so what? He'll take them. I think early on, if he gets caught, he'll take them and come through them. But if he's standing back and waits to see how it goes, and then thinks after 6-7 rounds, I better put it on him because I'm behind, too late. He'll already be fatigued by then. He'll already be busted up then. His confidence might be gone by then, and also Usyk's confidence could be sky high by then, and he's on top. So it's like, I think it's important that he sets this tone really early, straight away. First bell, bang, centre of the ring, be the boss, dictate.
How difficult can that be, though, Matt, to go into a fight, and again, going back to your own career, and to set the fight to your strategy, to be putting your foot down on the fight? So when you go back, you just mentioned kind of Felix Sturm fight, you fought a hellacious pace. People remember the Jamie Moore fight, a terrific fight to look back on. And then the difference in obviously the mental challenge of a Sergio Martinez, when you've got to change your approach and going with somebody like Alexander Usyk in Anthony Joshua's case, how difficult of a task is it to actually try to set the pace and set the fight to go how you want it to play out to your game plan?
Well, you see, I couldn't force the pace on Martinez because he had, he was spiteful power. He had good power. He wasn't. he had knockout of the year, didn't he, against Paul Williams? He carried good power, so and with the hands down and the really fast feet, it'd have been suicide if I tried to steam into him the way I did Felix Sturm and set that pace. I'd have just got chewed up. I couldn't have done it, so it had to be a completely different fight. It was a very tactical fight. The jab was key, the feints were key. There was the head movement was key. There was making sure I gave him a different look every round so he couldn't read me. That was key. A totally different Sturm fight was. Sturm's pretty textbook. What you see is what you get. Very good at what he does, but it was easy for me to find it. Plus, he wasn't a massive puncher. Sturm, huge for the weight, physical, strong, but it wasn't a big punch, not a one punch KO guy. So you could take more risks with the southpaw thing with Martinez, possibly looking to walk you onto one. You had to be more careful. So two completely different fights. AJ's for bigger punchers than Usyk, much bigger punchers. Dillian White caught him with a really good catch counter left hook, shot he didn't see, he buzzed him, but he recovered from it. Klitschko hurt him, big massive puncher, he shook it off, so he can recover and come back and win. So I think he's got to have the confidence in himself and think, you know what, I don't care if he catches me and buzzes me, I'll take it, I'll recover, I'm in super shape, I've sparred, I'm ready to go to war. Going to war means I'm going to get hit, but it also means I'm going to land mine. We're both throwing big shots here. My shots are a lot bigger than his. My shots are going to hurt him more than his are going to hurt me. But, he's got to do that while he's fresh, while he's sharp, while his reflexes are good. If he tries to do that late on when he's already knackered and then the reflexes aren't as sharp and all the rest of it, that is too late then.
Matt, how difficult can it actually just be to prepare for somebody like Alexander Usyk, for yourself, again, going to that Martinez fight? How did you find trying to get sparring in, trying to prepare for it? And did you work more of a game plan for that fight to suit what you wanted, or was you more so thinking about how Martinez would approach the fight and how you had to try and take away his best attributes?
Well, yeah, so I suppose what I'm trying to say is I couldn't. I had to be. Sometimes you think, right, never mind what the other guy does. You just focus on your game plan and impose yourself on him. But that wouldn't, and that's in many ways what I did with Felix Sturm. But I couldn't do that with Martinez because of the southpaw stance, taking away my jab and the distance, trying to close it. And he had quicker feet than me and quicker hands. So I had to be smart. And trying out and give him a different look and loads of feints and loads of head movement and not let him read me, because he was a counter puncher. So then he got frustrated. That's why, because that every fight's different. But with regard to AJ with Usyk, I think he can take more chances because I don't think Usyk hits as hard. We're talking pound for pound here now. Martinez, he had knockout of the year, but Usyk hasn't really. When Usyk's hurt guys, it's because he's got them late on. They're tired. He hits them with a shot they don't see late on in a fight when they're already fatigued. I think what I'm saying is I think AJ can take chances that maybe I couldn't afford to take with Martinez. Do you know what I mean? I prepared for Martinez knowing that it was going to be a tactical game of chess. So I brought sparring partners in that were southpaws, that were, like Austin Trout. Remember me and Austin Trout, we were sparring. I don't know how many punches we're throwing around, not loads, let me tell you, because he's a counter puncher. He's got fast hands, he's feinting, he's moving his head, he's trying to set me up. I'm doing the same. There was a lot of that going on, a lot not happening, or looking like it's not happening, but there's loads of thinking going on. There's loads of me trying to get him to make a mistake, him trying to make me a mistake. That was the perfect sparring for someone like Sergio Martinez, because it was going to be that type of fight. Now, I think for this fight with AJ and Usyk, I don't know who they had in sparring, but I'd have been really just trying to. I don't even know what I was sparred up to 12 rounds. I think I'd have just have him sparring 6 rounds, 7 rounds, maybe 8, a couple of 8s, and just like be aggressive, close that, get on top of him fast, get your shots off. If he tries, I think what AJ doesn't want to be. What's important, I think, for this fight is that he doesn't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink the southpaw thing. Just get in there, get in there, and get your shots go. Be aggressive, take the centre of the ring. If you get caught on the way in, you'll come through it. He was down at cruiserweight. He won't. I know he hurt you in the end, but you were. I'd be saying to him, I know he hurt you in the end. You were shattered. anyone would have got, you were tired. He didn't hurt you early on. You know, he won't hurt you. And if you're mentally prepared going in thinking, going out, leaving the change rooms, your heart's pounding because you know you're going to war tonight, you'll absorb the shots. You know, how many boxers will you can ask anyone. The amount of times you've sparred or fought someone who was known to be a big puncher and you get out the ring afterwards and think, that weren't up. Actually, I was expecting a lot worse, because in your head, you're prepared for this to be hurt, you're prepared for it, and actually when you get hit then, it wasn't that bad. But then you can go in there boxing a guy who you think's a non-puncher or a sparring, and they actually buzz you because they hit you with a shot that you hadn't prepared yourself to take that because you thought you couldn't punch, and you were too lax. Where I think if Joshua goes in thinking, no, I've got to go through fire tonight, I think whatever shot Usyk's throw at him, I think he'll take them. I think he'll come through them.
Just reflect on sparring Austin Trout for me, and at any point, or were there multiple points potentially where you might have become frustrated because it was a chess match? You knew that you needed to do it to get ready for Martinez, but it wasn't maybe something you was used to throughout your career.
Yeah, I hated it because it was like I felt shit sparring them, because it was like that's not how I want to fight. You know, I want to go bang, 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 bang and fight at fast pace and body shots, uppercuts, left hooks and good tempo and I find a nice rhythm. So I couldn't find no rhythm with Austin Trout, but it was preparing me for the fight. I didn't feel good in sparring. I don't think I felt good sparring once for the Martinez fight, you know, because it's not how I want to fight. I felt awkward. I felt uncomfortable. It never felt. Do you know what I mean? It's not how I want to fight, but that it was necessary to get used to feeling like that, because that's how I'm going to feel on the night against Sergio Martinez. That's why, training's preparation. It's all preparation, preparing us for the night. So even though I hated sparring Austin Trout and I felt shit and the slow pace and the couple of rounds and whatever, and successes here and there, but it prepared me for the fight against Sergio Martinez. The fight against Sergio was, it weren't like. There was periods where the patience was nearly getting the better of me. I was nearly going to get impatient and I was nearly going to commit because it was too slow of a pace. I like to be aggressive. I like to go bang, bang, bang. I like to throw lots of punches. That's how I always fought. That's how I was used to fighting. So to fight at a slower pace where I'm fainting, I'm thinking, I'm doing it. It wasn't natural for me, and it was uncomfortable. But patience was necessary. It was very necessary, because otherwise I'd have got my head boxed off. If I jumped the gun on it, it'd have just countered me, and he'd walked me onto shots. Do you know what I mean? So I had to go against what was already naturally ingrained in me. And the way I did that by preparing was to be patient bring sparring partners in that'd make you do that. Do you know what I mean? So it's the sparring. I don't know who AJ has sparred for this fight. Obviously, it'll be Southpaws. But again, I just think with him, I wouldn't overthink the Southpaw thing. I just go out there and be the boss.
Moving away from that and just kind of keeping with your career more so now, Matt, wasn't really expected to go this way, but when you make the comparison of your preparation for Sergio Martinez and the difference in that and the preparation for Canelo-Golovkin, a heavy-handed heavy hitter who looks for knockouts. I know you had stuff going on in camp and you wasn't necessarily 100%, but the difference in and change in how you had to prepare. Talk to me about that.
Well, I think the Sturm one's a better one to compare, because it was the fight just before Martinez and it went really well. Everything went well. So now was sparring for the Felix Sturm fight, we had I think Sebastian Demers, a guy from Canada, and also had Callum Johnson there, and had Paul Smith. So I think I did 3 rounds with. I think I did 4 rounds with Paul Smith, 4 with Callum Johnson, and 4 with this Canadian kid, and or 3, 4. I think we did 10 or 12 rounds. Can't remember now. But I've done a lot of track work, and I've done we do this run called Dove Stones, where it's like a real uphill run, because it was like I think we started 7 miles out or 6 or 7. It's like a 50-minute run, but last 4.5, all of it's uphill, but the last 4 of it's it never flats off. It's an uphill run, and it's hard. I'm gritting from the get-go of that run. I'm having conversations with myself all through that run, because I want to quit, and then the other part of me saying, don't you fucking dare quit. You go on. This is what it's taking. If you want to quit now, you're going to lose the fight. That's what this means. You keep going. And I've got Crawler and Quigg who are natural great runners ahead of me, and I'm trying to catch them. So. Going on that run, I'm going through the emotions of the fight I would have gone through with Sturm, because I knew this with Sturm. I thought, I'm going to Germany. I need to start fast, get ahead on the cards. He needs to pull the fight back. Then he needs to chase the fight and knock me out. He ain't gonna knock me out. I mean, he had he was a really good boxer, but he ain't got the power to knock me out. And he's not great at going after the fight. If he's got to come from behind, I don't think he can. He's going to struggle to do that. I'm going to be super fit. He's going to think that I'm not going to keep this pace up, and I am going to keep it up. That was my game plan in the head. I thought, get ahead on the cards. I'm in Germany. I need to win the rounds big. Get the judges looking at me. Get ahead, and then he's got to chase the fight, or he's got to come from behind and try and get a knockout, and that ain't going to happen. And I know we didn't get the decision, but I do believe we did execute that game plan and should have got it. So that was the training for that was. Fitness was massive. The sparring was good. There was. Do you know what I mean? I was throwing lots of shots. I sparred and I trained how I fought the fight. Like I said, the fight with Martinez. I remember Buddy saying to me, "You'll win this fight, but the way you win this fight is the jab. You just control the distance, control the paint, loads of feints, loads of head movement. Just keep taking little steps, and every round just give him a different look." Don't let him. He's a counter puncher. He wants to read you. He wants to start timing you. He wants to pick you off on the way. Don't do that. He goes, stand back and box him. You'll confuse the shit out of him, which it did. Because Buddy's wife is Puerto Rican and she speaks Spanish. And I think after the 8th or 9th round, they've said to him, "Sergio, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And he said, I can't work him out. So Buddy read it right. And I got caught then the end of the 11th, 2 knockdowns, and But nearly those were two polar opposites fights. So tactics do depend, on who you're fighting. So sometimes it can be less about the opponent, what he does. It can be more about what you want to do. I think in this fight, I think AJ shouldn't think too much about what Usyk's going to do. Just go out there and do what you're going to do. Just you're Anthony Joshua. You've knocked out Povetkin. You've knocked out Dillian White. You've knocked out all these fighters. Do you know what I mean? Get out there and stick it on him straight away. Give him no respect, none. Just jump on him, bully him. That's what he needs to do. And don't worry about what Usyk does in his southpaw and that. Who cares? Just go through him. I think the most important thing for Joshua in this, it's not about technique or tactic. It meant mindset. You're Anthony Joshua. You're the 2-time heavyweight champion of the world. You fought the wrong fight last time. Get out this there and stick it on him straight away.
Matt, you mentioned training alongside Buddy. Obviously, you trained alongside Joe Gallagher as well, amongst others. But the changing trainers we've seen with AJ changing from Rob McCracken to Robert Garcia now. I was bringing Angel Fernandez in alongside that. For yourself, how difficult was it to kind of change from the one way of training when you've done it for so many years to then changing to a new trainer? Is it difficult to get out of the same routine?
Yeah, it is, because what happens is you're because what happens is if you want to be teachable, so you change trainers because you believe that changes need to be made, adjustments. So you go with a trainer, and they'll have their imprint, they'll have their style of fighting, their way of fighting, and they'll say they don't want to change you, they just want to add things. But nonetheless, they're going to be working on new things, which is going to be your main focus on the new things. So every day, your repetitions, drills, pads, repetitions, drills, pads. You're trying to reprogram your body to fight, because on the night it's just got to happen, hasn't it? It's got to be instinctive. You can't sit there and think about it too much. Like you're thinking about it, but the thoughts are happening at light speed. You're talking split seconds. It's already, your body's already programmed to these shots that are going to work. But obviously then your body has, so how much you can reprogram your body in 6 to 8 weeks will be limited. There'll be a limit on that, but 6 to 8 weeks or 10 weeks, however many weeks you spend with this trainer training, the more fights you have, the more you're going to reprogram your body. the less time you have, then the more that you've already been reprogrammed, all the programming that you've done over the years of training a certain way, that's ingrained in you, and the more likely, if the fight gets tough, that you might revert to type, or you get buzzed, or you get hurt, or it's not going your way, you might revert to what's already been programmed in your body, your natural style, because that's what comes natural, instinctively. That's what comes to you. But to go with a new trainer, and you're working on the new things, obviously you're reprogramming and that. But to really integrate that into your repertoire, your new style, it can take a few fights. It can take a few fights. Now, look, I think you'll if you're someone that's teachable, if you're someone that really buys into the new trainer, someone that really listens, then there can definitely be adjustments made. How much you can make in a one camp, I don't know.
Matt, moving away from that,
And the worst thing you can do, and this can happen, and I've felt this has happened to me before, you can get caught between the two. That's where you don't want to be. You get caught between the new stuff and then revert into type a little bit, and you're a little bit in no man's land there. You don't want that. But, I think I was speaking to Robert Garcia earlier, and actually they've been speaking and talking for a lot longer than I thought. And anyway, I don't think in this fight, and I don't think the Robert Garcia, I don't think it matters so much about certain shots or techniques, because I think the most important thing here is the mindset, is his mental approach, his attitude, his belief about how he's going to win this fight. I think that's the key element here for Anthony Joshua. And maybe, with Robert Garcia we're talking, it's like, the coffee, when they finish training, they're having lunch and they're having a coffee and they're going for a walk and they're talking about the last fight and the new fight, and they're talking about, when Hagler jumped on Hearns and when Ricky Hatton jumped on Costa Sue, and these conversations about fights from years ago where guys come out and jumped on guys, and you know what I mean? There is important. That training the mind, building the confidence and the belief, and getting him to really be in sync and on page with how we're going to go about this fight and get this job done. That can be as important as the pad session. Those conversations after, for weeks and weeks and weeks building up to the fight. Because for me, going into this fight, Anthony Joshua's mental approach, that's the key factor.
But when we speak about the mental approach, when AJ's in the ring, say when Alexander lands on him for that first time, how difficult will it be for him to maybe keep out of his mind what happened in the first fight, and not to want to revert back to the AJ of old, the AJ that we saw in the Rob McCracken? Not disrespecting obviously Rob, but he's trying to bring in a new style, bring in something different with Robert.
Yeah, definitely no disrespect, because Robert was right. The Ruiz rematch and the Purewal fight, those were the right tactics for those fights, and maybe they thought going into the Usyk one, because he outboxed Purewal and he outboxed Ruiz, maybe they thought, well, we'll stand back and outbox and then we'll see how it goes. And he did have success. He did win some of those middle rounds, didn't he? But I just think it took too much out of him fighting that way, that he couldn't stay with it then. And Usyk stepped up and he couldn't step with him. They know that now. All right, he's not with Robert anymore, but with Garcia, they can look at that. And Anthony Joshua know himself now. Do you know what? Yeah, I stayed with him for a bit, but it done me. I couldn't. It exhausted me. Where he was comfortable at it. All right, so I'd imagine he spoke with Garcia and they've said, you know what, we ain't boxing this guy. We're not boxing this guy. This guy ain't going to outbox us. We're not going to outbox him. There ain't going to be no boxing. We're going to make this guy fight our fight. That's what they need to do. And I think that's what they'll be. And how they do that is you just go out, take the centre ring and be bullish. And you're saying, if he gets clipped, so what? Like you say, I said, have that convo. You are going to get clipped. You're not going to drag this guy into a fight without getting clipped. But you'll take it. You'll be all right. You'll get hit. When you're fresh, you'll take it. If you get clipped in the 12th round and you're knackered, and you get hit with a shot you don't see, you might not take it. First couple of rounds, you're in there and you're mentally prepared to go to war. The shots will bounce off you, most likely. Or you get buzzed, so what? You come back. It's like, Marvin Hagler you know, against Ricky Hatton. Costa Sue was a murderous puncher. You know, destroyed Sharmba Mitchell, knocked out Zab Judah, but Ricky was prepared in his mind to go through the fire. You know what I mean? He got hurt by Eamon McGee, he got hurt by Vince Phillips, good punchers, but not as good as Costa Sue punchers. But Ricky in his mind had gone through that fight so many times, thinking, I'm going to get buzzed, but I don't care. It's my night. I'm coming through it, and he was prepared to go through the fire. And he jumped in and he dragged Costa Sue into his fight, and it exhausted. We said that AJ fighting Usyk's fight, it drained him. Hatton drained Costa Sue. You know what I mean? So, let me tell you, if AJ jumps on Usyk and it's rough and it's tough and there's clinching and it's physical, Usyk could be tired. Believe me, in that type of a fight. But standing back trying to box and fiddling, fainting, that's going to drain AJ more.
Matt, moving away from this, we'll get your thoughts on one other fight again. Somebody you'd know well. We briefly touched on him earlier. Is the Canelo-Golovkin trilogy. What do you think happens this time around?
I think Canelo will win comfortably. I think if you look at Golovkin's last fight, even though he won well in the end, he looked old. He looked tired. He didn't look anywhere near the dynamic killer, I suppose, that he was early on. He was a machine, wasn't he? When he was cutting through contenders, he was just destroying people. He was, I think, probably the most active champion at the time as well. And he was sharp, and he was just destroying everyone. And but he hasn't. He's old now. He's 40. And father time waits for no man. Biology. We just stop producing certain hormones. We don't recover as long. And he's not as. Canelo's getting older too, but he's still a good bit younger. And I'd say Canelo's, at the top. I think he had a bad night against Purewal. Purewal maybe a bit too big and probably just fought a really smart fight. And I think Canelo had a bit of an off night, but I think he'll be gunning to put that one behind him. I think he'll be a man on a mission, Canelo, and I just don't think Golovkin has got the same energy levels anymore.
Most people would probably agree with that, Matt, especially when you look at the Murata win most recently for Gennady Golovkin. But kind of for yourself, when you look back at when you fought him, the one thing people always say in boxing is the last thing you lose is your power, and Gennady's always been considered one of the heaviest hitters in the sport. When you prepared for Gennady, did you believe that hype at the time? Because obviously he wasn't at the stage of his career where he was a few years on.
No, I knew he was a really good fighter, but I knew that even before the fight got made, or before everyone else knew it, because don't forget, he's the same age as me. He boxed in the World Junior Championships in Budapest in 2000. I went there for England at 67 kilo, and I got beaten in the quarterfinals. But he lost. Well, I got robbed in the quarterfinals. But anyway, I didn't medal. But he won the gold medal, the weight below me, and he got best boxer of the tournament. Now, I never seen him boxing in Budapest, but I remember I was reading for the results when we come back to see who'd gone on and won, and he'd won the gold medal and got best boxer. So I thought, oh, he must be good. So I stood out, and then he boxed. The guy I boxed in my last amateur fight was a Russian guy called Andrei Balanov, good fighter, world number one at the time, and he about 6 months after I lost to him, Golovkin beat him. So I knew, and I knew Golovkin's name from the year before, from the World Junior. So it was a name that resonated with me, and a name that I remembered, and a name that I thought one day our paths might cross. So yeah, he was. He weren't just a big puncher, Golovkin, brilliant boxer as well. But his energy levels aren't there no more. He's 40 years old. He's 40 years old, and he's even though he's lived a life and he's had a great career, I think he's slowed down dramatically the last few years.
I know we are expecting, as you say, an older and slower version of Gennady Golovkin come September 17th, but just kind of recollecting from when you fought him, away from his punching power, what was it in particular that maybe you found so tricky, which stood out for you?
Well, it wasn't blisteringly quick, but he had very good timing, very good, brilliant judge of distance, great balance, great feet. He was brilliant at keeping you under pressure. Just out of distance enough that you couldn't, he wasn't there to be hit, but he was only a quick step and he's on you and he's catching you. So he was brilliant with his excellent feet, brilliant ring gentlemanship, and just an all round good fighter, great chin. No real standout obvious weaknesses.
When you're in the ring then with somebody like that, Matt, does it become disheartening when you start to maybe feel like you can't work your way around this guy to start to edge ahead on the cards to the very least?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my approach to the fight tactically was completely wrong. I didn't. We talk about buying into it, like I'm talking. That's what I'm saying about Anthony Joshua. It's all right, Robert Garcia saying, if he is saying this, we need to jump on this guy. We need to do this. We need to go through the fire. You might get clipped. You might get buzzed. You might get winded, but you'll come through it. This is how you beat this guy. Robert Garcia can say that to Anthony Joshua, but Anthony Joshua has to buy into that. He has to believe in that himself. I didn't buy into or believe that I could outbox Golovkin. So when Buddy was like, move to your right, make him reach with the jab, even when I was trying to do it in sparring, I never felt comfortable doing it. You know what I mean? I didn't feel comfortable doing it. I didn't feel like I didn't believe that I could do that and beat him that way. But Buddy got it spot on with Martinez, and I was like, all right. And in my head, I thought, okay, well, we'll try that. And if that doesn't work after a couple of rounds, I'm just going to go and have it with him. But the problem, which I did, and I got done in the third, but the problem was, by that point, I was already under the cosh. His tail was up and mine was between my legs. Do you know what I mean? So I should have done that from the get-go. First bell, it's 50-50. Bell goes right. Now someone's going to get the upper hand and someone's not. I should have just jumped on him and just gone for it then. And I still might have got done in 3 rounds, by the way. But at least I'd have gone out banging. I'd have gone out swinging. I'd have gone out. And I could have looked myself in the mirror afterwards and been happy that I approached the fight the way I wanted to. I went out the way I did. And I just got beat by a better man. And I did get beat by a better man, by the way. But I got beat by a better man fighting the wrong fight, which bothered me, really. It was hard for me to take. Not because I got done in 3 rounds, but because I didn't box him the way I believed, and I got beat. I would have gone in and gone for it the way I'd hoped to, or the way I believed to approach it, and still got beat, and that would have been okay. That would have been easier for me to take.
Right, Matt, we will leave that there now, and I'll leave you to kind of crack on with your day, because I'm sure we're probably getting a lot closer to you needing to go and do some work with Sky. I appreciate your time, though. Thank you for speaking to me in ID Boxing.
Cheers, nice one.